Laura Shin is a writer, cryptojournalist, and podcaster. She is the host of podcast Unchained and author of The Cryptopians. During the course of writing her book, she uncovered who she believes was behind the 2016 DAO attack on Ethereum. Formerly a senior editor at Forbes, she was the first mainstream journalist to cover crypto full-time, and her podcasts and videos have had more than 15 million downloads and views.
Thank you so much for coming here to our next episode of Speak Bold, a Fireside Chat series.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. Laura Shin, I've been such a personal, long-time fan, and I'm just so honored that you're here today.
Thanks so much for listening.
So, you've just released a new book called The Cryptopians.
Yes.
Idealism, greed, lies, and the making of the first big cryptocurrency craze.
Yep.
Can you give us a quick summary of the book?
Yeah, sure. So I am a journalist. I've been covering crypto for almost 7 years. And in 2017, there was a massive mania in crypto. And at the end of it, 2018 is when I started working on this book. And I wanted to explain the story of how that big bubble happened. And so that's the story that's told in the book. But because Ethereum was the main platform for all that, the book actually ends up being a history of Ethereum, probably for like 3/4 of it. Just describing like how it got started, what the purpose was. I'm talking about one of the, probably actually the major event in Ethereum's life, which was the DAO and the DAO hack. And then going into this initial coin offering craze, which created this bubble. And so it's really, it's all just building up to that ending phase. But yeah, it tells all of that in a narrative fashion, as we call it, meaning it reads like a fiction book, but everything is something I've reported and verified and fact-checked. So it's all something that happened.
That's amazing. Since Ethereum was one of the more popular blockchain networks at the time when you started covering crypto, Vitalik's ability to distill complex information into something a little more simple, at least something for people that aren't mathematicians or computer sciences to understand. Do you think Vitalik's ability to explain these in simple forms, do you think that manifested the momentum that caused Ethereum to be successful?
That's a good question. So, what I think you're referencing is the fact that he started in crypto as a journalist, actually writing about Bitcoin for, first it was a publication called Bitcoin Weekly, and then later another one called Bitcoin Magazine, which he eventually became an owner of, or part owner of. And certainly he did, have this ability to distill complex, blockchain-like topics into more accessible language. But I actually think, when I spoke with people about their interest in Ethereum from early on, I think many of them actually just understood that the concept for it was really something novel and quite different compared to many of the other new blockchains that were being formed, because primarily at that time, a lot of the new blockchains were just simply adding on new features to Bitcoin. And what Vitalik saw was, if you go about it that way, then every time a new blockchain comes out with additional features, the previous ones will be sort of obsolete or won't be as exciting. And he thought, why can't it be more of an open-ended kind of platform where any developer can have any idea and upload it sort of, app store style to a decentralized platform and create a decentralized application, the way that, for instance, the Apple App Store has, photo apps and cooking apps and financial apps and travel apps. And, it's just whatever people's imaginations or creativity can create. And so because this was a novel idea and he centered Ethereum more around a programming language rather than having Ethereum be a blockchain with specific features, a lot of people spoke about how they sort of recognized kind of immediately that this was something new and different from Bitcoin, that it wasn't just like tweaks on Bitcoin or variations on Bitcoin, but something totally new.
Absolutely. I remember that time because for me, I remember I started mining Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Dogecoin in 2013.
Oh, that's so funny.
I remember, Dogecoin is a fork of Bitcoin, and Litecoin is a fork of Bitcoin.
Right.
And you're right, it was little adjustments being made to the same
Exactly.
protocol, the same software. And so he just came out with something that was just completely different, kind of like a version, I wouldn't even say version 2.0, it's like a version 4.0, you know, as it relates to like how Bitcoin operated and what his vision set out for Ethereum.
Yeah, people actually said that when they watched him present for the first time at the North American Bitcoin conference in Miami, that they even at that moment, just in this 25-minute speech, that they recognized, oh, this is different. And he got a standing ovation, and people followed him out into the hall. And I watched the video of it. It was, you know, kind of interesting to see that was the origin.
That's amazing. What are some of the reactions that you got as it relates to the Forbes article or the revelation of the DAO attack that you've gotten from the community the day that your book launched?
Well, I have to say, so it's not very common for the crypto community to be complimentary to journalists, but people have been tweeting at me that I'm the GOAT, which is awesome and wonderful. And surprisingly, people haven't really pushed back to say that I'm wrong, or, you know, they don't think the evidence is strong. You know, before publishing it, I basically, so I revealed the information in Forbes, but you know, I was shopping it to some different publications, and I had to do it in this way where I wouldn't reveal the information because I didn't want somebody to steal my scoop before the book had come out, and you know. And so because they couldn't necessarily see my evidence, they were saying things like, oh, what if it's like when Newsweek revealed Dorian Nakamoto as Satoshi Nakamoto, which, you know, now is widely thought to have been inaccurate. And so they were all concerned about this. But, you know, I was saying, oh, well, you know, my evidence is very strong. It's very good. And I knew it from all angles. It's like just the piece of evidence where I got the name, you know, that was strong in itself. But then to go back and see what was this person doing at the time of the hack and the time of the DAO, and sort of look at, you know, their social media activity and find some private correspondence they had with people about it. And so then once I had that, then everything fit together. It was like, you know, it wasn't even just where I got that name in the beginning and then it matched a bunch of other clues I had gathered along the way, but it was like even when I did more reporting. So I have seen additional media around it, and people are observing, yes, I'm getting no pushback, and people seem to, you know, think that it's legit. So so honestly, it's just been such a wonderful reception, and I think it did help boost the book sales. The book hit 364 on Amazon, which is apparently extremely difficult to crack the top 1,000. So, you know, I'm grateful for that. I feel like the news really helped. So overall, it's been very positive.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think it speaks worlds to, like, you are one of the most well-respected journalists in crypto.
Thank you.
So I think that, you know,
thanks.
I think people know that you have this very journalistic approach. Like you have all of your sources, you vet all of them, and you do all this backstory as, you know, I feel like a lot of publications, no one has a thorough, or in my opinion, you know, there's very few journalists in the space that have such a thorough approach.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to give credit to my sources, because it wasn't that I figured this out on my own. I was working with different sources who cannot necessarily come forward. One piece that was really great, though, is that one key to coming up with an identity was that the hacker, in trying to cash out and launder their money, had used what's called Wasabi Wallet, which is a type of mixer for Bitcoin. And basically, when you use Wasabi, then it will mix up your transactions with a bunch of other people's at the same time. And Chainalysis, which is a blockchain analytics firm, they demixed the Wasabi transactions that the hacker had used to follow the trail. And that was a key step. And they came forward and claimed credit for that step. And, they did not say how long they've been able to do that, but I imagine probably this wasn't the first time they had used that, ability to kind of follow the trail. And so, I just really am grateful to them that they did step forward, because otherwise I would have had to, then I just really wonder if people would have believed if I had said, okay, well, here's the trail and blah, 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 But yeah, so that was really great that they did that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the benefits of immutable data on the blockchain.
Oh,
right?
yes, exactly. I know. Well, as we saw also with the case involving the couple that was caught laundering the Bitcoins from the Bitfinex hack, both of those hacks happened around the same time. The DAO hack was in June 2016 and the Bitfinex one was in August 2016. And here we are 5.5 years later from both of those, and these cases are kind of, starting to unravel a little bit. And so frankly, one of my takeaways is that, blockchain analytics is going to catch up with you,
Oh, absolutely.
If you're planning
because
to do something
there.
illicit,
it
exactly.
never leaves.
Yeah.
So
yeah, especially for these public blockchains. Sure. So if you're trying to do something on one of those and it's not on the up and up, then watch out.
Exactly. And the only thing that will save you is maybe statute of limitations. Does that even apply in scenarios like this?
I'm definitely not a legal expert, so I can't really say. Yes. Ask somebody who's more familiar with the law and all those things. And it probably also depends on jurisdiction. And I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. So as a journalist, your goal is to report on facts and shedding light on things that occurred, almost like a historian. Really.
Yeah.
What did you want the readers to take away from this book?
Well, it was mainly that I wanted them just to know what happened. I really did look at the book as an historical document, as you mentioned. I tried to think about 100 years from now, what would I want people, to know about the founding of Ethereum, or really more just the adoption of crypto. And it was just what it was that happened, basically. If I could find out, what really happened, and I could verify it, and, people were saying that that's what happened, and I had evidence for it, then, I was going to put it in. So, I really just wanted to know, what were people thinking? What were they arguing about? What did they think about each other? Who were the characters involved? And so the book really goes into all of those factors, and some interesting themes that came out that I think kind of put all of this information and activity into historical perspective are that if you look at kind of how maybe in the 80s or 90s, Wall Street was where the power center was, right? And that was what had cachet in our society. And then in the 2000s, it really shifted more towards Silicon Valley and toward these big tech giants. But now I actually think it's moving to crypto. And but crypto is also reflecting the shift from the importance of kind of business to developers. And we see this play out over and over again in the conflicts in the book, where the co-founders kind of broadly fell into two camps, the biz guys and the devs, developers. And they have these fights basically over different things about the direction of the project. And over again, the developers win. And, they're really the ones in control because they're the ones building the thing. And so, that I feel like that's a theme that, I saw in the book, and that I think, 100 years from now, when people do look back at this time, I wonder if they'll sort of understand that was a shift. And at least, from what I could see in reporting my book, I do think that is currently a shift that's happening with crypto.
That's interesting. Yes. I was reading this book on the way back, driving last night with my partner, and yeah, it was interesting because we've been in. I personally used to be a partner at 500 startups. So when I left, there was 1,600 portfolio companies.
Oh, wow.
Right. So it was interesting for me to hear some of these conflicts, because I also have seen data that the reason why things fail most in startups is due to founder conflicts.
Oh, yes.
So it was really interesting to hear what went on, because it's actually more common than you think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And as you have read in the book, that was a major, major issue early on.
Yeah.
And yes, it definitely resulted in some people getting booted.
Yeah.
And that was how Ethereum continued on.
But it seems like some of those people that got booted started their own thing, right? A lot of them in the ICO craze kind of started, their own version of what they thought it should be. So it was very interesting to see that as well.
Yes.
I hope I'm not giving away too many spoilers, but
no. I mean, I think these are widely known facts, at least for crypto people. So back to crypto people.
So I know a lot of crypto enthusiasts or people that have known you for many years, myself included. We're very excited about this coming out. Is there any other audience besides the one that you already serve that you think that would benefit most from the history that you've written in the book?
Yeah, well, I do have to say that I had a number of my own friends read the book, meaning non-crypto people, and also a couple of other non-crypto people that I have worked on the book with, such as my audiobooks engineer and just other people who know me and have read it, but are also not in this world. They have come away with a really solid understanding of crypto, and some of them have become completely obsessed with crypto. My audiobooks engineer knew zero about crypto when we started on a Monday. And by Wednesday afternoon at lunch, he was asking me such intelligent questions. I was like, how do you know so much about crypto? And he said, from your book. Just 2.5 days of recording. And it just seemed kind of like a mini expert to me. And then by the end of the full recording, he just loved the book. And he was like, Laura, you don't understand. I do 150 books a year. It's just in one ear, out the other. And like one of the jobs when you're doing that kind of work is you just make sure that the narrator says the exact word that's on the page. And he's like, I do that, but do I retain anything? No. And he like just got so into my book that he was sad when we were done, and he like wanted to hug me. And then and we've kept in touch, and we've continued to do some work here and there together. And he's now a total crypto person, to the point where, so I listen to podcasts a lot. I'm actually not a big YouTube person. And he said to me, oh, hey, there's this crypto content, creator that I really love on YouTube. And he was talking about your podcast and how you're so great and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, interesting. So I checked out this person, and, very popular following. His name was Coin Bureau. And so I was like, oh, I'll send him an early copy of the book. And I did. And then he plugged it multiple times. And I happened to go to England right after my book came out, and I met him in person. But that was all from my audiobooks engineer, who before doing the book knew zero about crypto, and then now was like introducing me to another content creator I hadn't even heard of. So
that's amazing.
But he got really into it. My best friend, who's like an actor and artist and yoga instructor, she like definitely understands way more about crypto and is like trying to do NFTs. And so she actually even understood it so well. She caught some mistakes in the book, which I hadn't noticed. She didn't realize they were mistakes, but one was like, she was like, oh, hey, here you said they were going to do it this way, but then at this other point you said they were going to do it that way. And I was like, oh, right, because they changed their minds in between and I forgot to tell the reader. Like stuff like that. So she was paying very close attention and understood it all. So in general, yeah, I would say from my personal experience so far, it does seem that even non-crypto people really enjoy the book and learn about crypto along the way. So hopefully I'll get more readers like that.
That's amazing. Yeah, I would say that even though basically writing a history book, but the way that you present the information through storytelling,
yes,
is very impactful.
Yeah, someone did say to me, oh, when you use the word history, it sounds boring. And they were like, but this is a juicy book. They were like, this is not a history. Yeah, and I wasn't trying to make it juicy, but it just turns out that is what happened. It was
the history was juicy,
filled with drama. Yes, drama, intrigue, and just conflict and all kinds of.
But it does speak volumes to how you presented the information, how you wrote the information.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, it wasn't like I said this at a conference recently so I don't remember what the question was that they asked me, but it was something about how I cover the space, and I was like, I mean, come on, for a storyteller, I was like, there's so many crazy events. There's such colorful characters. I was like, I don't even have to do anything. And the audience just like was laughing hysterically, but it's true.
So you used to cover crypto in Forbes, and then you started your podcast, and this was over 7 years ago. So you've met a lot of the industry players, a lot of them who are, might have big egos and might, and that are change makers, right? You have to kind of have that confidence to be that change maker. How have you seen that? How have you seen the space evolve from, 7 years ago to now in terms of the type of people that it attracted then to what they have now?
That's interesting. So definitely in the beginning, because it was 2015 and it was kind of a bear market in crypto. At that time, it was just more idealistic builders who, just really believed in the technology and, wanted, they just had fallen down the rabbit hole and were like big believers in Bitcoin or blockchain technology. And something that was interesting back then was, because that was the era of blockchain, not Bitcoin. I don't know if you remember that phase. There were a lot of kind of financial services people who were saying, oh, this is going to make Wall Street more efficient. And so I was doing a lot of interviews with different kind of Wall Street types. And things have really changed. Now it's like more just kind of these developers, and it's very much more about open source and not about these corporations. Obviously corporations are getting involved in different ways, but it's not really the same vision. You have dominant players like Uniswap, where it's this decentralized protocol. And of course, yes, we have a Uniswap Labs that maybe builds things around it, but it's still quite different from those days in 2015 where it was like NASDAQ and Visa were experimenting with blockchain. But one other thing that's happened along the way is that we've seen so many scammers that have come into the space. And so, this was a big thing that I saw happening in 2017, where I remember saying at that time, my job started out as kind of like learning about this really interesting new technology. And now it's become a lot more of looking at scammy projects and like trying to warn people to be careful about, phishers and losing their coins. And frankly, it still happens to this day. I get so many imposters all the time. And somebody actually literally messaged me at some point in the past few weeks, and they lost money to one of them thinking that I actually was giving away Bitcoin or Ether or whatever it was. And they sent money to this place. And I was like, oh my gosh. So
like, don't they know you? Don't they know that you would never do that?
Honestly, this platform was on Facebook. And so it's just, I think, a different user from like somebody on Twitter. But yeah, I just was, anyway, so I know. But it's really just a different space because there's just so many more people. But one thing that's really nice is that, for a long time, I do feel that kind of a lot of ideals were being spouted about the democratizing potential of blockchain technology. But then, it didn't really look like that the way it was panning out. But something that's been interesting is just, I've seen, for instance, when I first started, there were like barely any women. Like I remember going to this one conference where it was kind of like Wall Street plus blockchain. And I literally was like one of 3 women or something. Mm-hmm. Like it was like really, really, I felt very out of place. Yes. And so recently, there's been like all these DAOs that are coming up, decentralized autonomous organizations, which are just like, loose groups of people. And then they maybe like share a multi-sig and they like invest together or, they have so many different purposes. As we know, there have been even ones where they're like trying to buy a copy of the US Constitution, or, I think there's another one now trying to buy like a football team, or I don't know. I heard about one called Fries DAO, which has something to do with fries. But anyway, so the point is that I have heard that some of these Web3 investment clubs, so there's a company, Syndicate DAO, where they created these Web3 investment clubs. It's like just tooling to make it very easy to create an investment club, which is 99 people or less. And for the initial cohort that they launched with, half of them were either women-led or all women DAOs. Wow. Which, yeah, and I had the co-founders on my show, and they said, we didn't try to do that. But it was just kind of like mission alignment. We just were looking for people with certain values. And when we went to launch, we just suddenly realized, oh, wait, half of these are either all women DAOs or female led. And so, it's just such a change from 7 years ago, frankly, on that score. Like, obviously, we still are not, at gender parity in any respect, but there's definitely more women, which is just nice to see. So yeah, there have been a lot of changes, both good and bad, I would say, in terms of who's involved.
That's true.
Yeah.
And I would love to get more information on, the DAO that you're talking about.
Oh, wait, the Web3 investment funds you're talking about?
I would love
my
that.
gosh. I'm just blanking. I wrote about them, actually. I'm just blanking on their names, but some of them are female VCs that are doing this. And I remember one of them told me that what it is that the way they've divided it is like some of the women in the group are kind of like more into NFTs and they know that world better. And then others are like more into DeFi and they know that world better. And so they, like, certain people are kind of designated with investing for the group for certain areas, but then everybody benefits, when they profit from whatever investments they're doing. So yeah, and frankly, she was like, come back to me in a little while because I think there's going to be more movement. And I was like, okay, this sounds like a story. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, I will be reporting more on it.
Yeah. And then there was also that investment fund that Britt Morin and Mila Kunis and Gwyneth Paltrow all did.
But is it a crypto one or?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, I
it is.
haven't
Like
heard
for Web3, it was in the news maybe like a couple of months ago.
Oh.
There was like a consortium, all these just business leaders that came together to do it. It was more mainstream, like it was more of like a traditional venture fund investing in crypto versus using the technology of a DAO to do it, but it accomplishes the same thing.
Right. Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I know. I mean, there's so many mainstream celebrities that are getting in.
Yeah.
I know Mila Kunis, who you mentioned, Reese Witherspoon, I've seen, tweeting. I know Mindy Kaling is an advisor to Katie Hahn's new firm, which, obviously there's just so much crossover now with the NFTs. So I definitely think we're just going to see more and more of it. Frankly, I personally think that like so much of our culture is just going to go crypto. People are resisting it, in different pockets here and there, but I personally think it's inevitable. So
that's amazing. And it just seems that all of these shifts, whether it's on a social diversity level or even what's going on in Russia and the Ukraine, for example.
Like, that's a perfect example. I mean, think about it. Ukraine, so as of a few days ago, it was like $50 million that they raised, and it's going to equipment like immediately. I mean, first of all, have we ever even seen a government tweet out donation addresses while they're, in the middle of a war? Like, no, that's just historic. No. And then I saw one of the Ukrainian ministers saying like, oh, this is where the vast majority of the donations are just coming from everyday people, not like major whales or celebrities or anything like that. And so for them to raise $50 million, I mean, it's huge,
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, I know.
That's unprecedented, and it's interesting to see all these creative ways that people are using the technology. Like, I would have never thought that they could do that.
I know. All they did was tweet it out.
That's amazing.
Boom, boom, boom. And yeah, I mean, it's honestly just incredible. But I really think it goes to show just how many people have, embraced crypto and it's really not anywhere near as French as it used to be. So
yeah, I think that maybe it comes down to the usability, the UI, the progression of how it's evolved over time. It's easier to use definitely today than it was 7 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, granted, there's still a long way to go, but yeah, the fact that, like I said, this government, and not only that, but like the fact that there was enough liquidity for Bitcoin and Ether, and they even took Polkadot, to turn it into money that they could use to fight this war. I mean, that's that's saying something too, because, you know, there was a time previously where it would be like, oh, okay, great. So you have some Bitcoin, but you're not in the US. So how are you going to turn that into your local currency, you know? But yeah, there's just so many more places now all around the world where you can convert from Bitcoin to fiat or any crypto to fiat.
I wonder if it's fiat, they're using the US dollar, I would imagine, at this point.
In Ukraine?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. But, you know, they accepted Bitcoin, Ether, Tether, and DOT. So
it's amazing. I'm so happy that they got to raise those funds. Again, it's just super unprecedented. And,
yes.
And wow, like what else is, you know, this technology going to bring in years to come?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, I think we're just going to see more and more of these sort of like unexpected situations and uses. I mean, frankly, it just happens all the time. I mean, like last year when El Salvador adopted Bitcoin as legal tender, you know, I mean, there's just going to be more and more of these surprises along the way, I think.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's so amazing that you are a female founder. I think that when they think of Laura Shin, she's this journalist. She's now a published author, but also you're a female founder. Tell us about your journey becoming a business owner.
So I've actually worked for myself for most of my career. I, for whatever reason, just have always preferred to work for myself. I think most people feel that way. But I have really felt strongly about it to the point where I've really just done it for most of my career. And so I started at Forbes as a freelancer, as one of their contributors. And it was during that time that I started my podcast with them. They started with 12 podcasts. And when I found out, I said, hey, I want one. So Unchained became the 13th podcast. And I actually think it's the only one of theirs that is still going, although it's actually mine. Because, and when I say it's mine, since I was a freelancer at the time, the way the contract was written up was that I would own it from the outset. I, owned the copyright and everything. And I did that for one season, but then they decided they weren't going to continue it. So I found my own sponsor for the show. And so this was like fall of 2016 when they said, we're not going to keep going with it. And crypto and blockchain were so not popular then that I just was desperate pretty much to find a sponsor, but I finally found one, and the sponsor took the full year of sponsorship on the podcast, which was great because it meant I could do it for another year. But it was just funny because the downloads grew so much during that year that this sponsor just got like the steal of a lifetime. But the good thing is that, so what ended up happening is in the middle of 2017, I went full-time at Forbes. I became the senior editor there. Because I was just getting all these other offers, and finally they said, okay, well, we'll let you come on board and we will let you only cover crypto, because I had been begging them to let me do that for kind of a while. So anyway, then at the end of that year, somebody who was helping me with the show, she said to me, Laura, by the way, I've been doing all this research on all these different crypto podcasts, and you have way more downloads than anybody else, and this is what they're charging for ads. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's more money than I make in my current job. And since, we were seeing this bubble that, was reaching its peak, and I knew something historic was happening and I wanted to write a book, I decided to leave Forbes and just do the podcast. And I knew I could, cover my expenses, but only have to work like 2 days a week or something. So then I used the remaining time to work my book. And yeah, finally now, 4 years later, it's coming out. But that was, basically how I split my time the last 4 years.
That's amazing. Good on you for
thanks. Yeah.
Putting those two things together and be able to sustain a business and yourself and write a book at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I have to say I really lucked out with the copyright issue and the trademark issue, because the contract was just written that way from the start. But a lot of journalists, like if they start something like that, like a show with a publication, then normally the publication will own all the rights. But because I was not a full-time employee, I owned them from the beginning. And frankly, it was
that just worked out in your favor.
A real stroke
No,
of luck.
Laura, that was all you. You had the business sense to do
Oh,
that.
I wish. I didn't even send the contract to my lawyer, which is crazy because now I would never ever sign anything without sending it to my lawyer. It was a stroke of luck, but I'm really glad. And yeah, now I have like a little budding media company, and I, have people who work for me and stuff like that. And
That's amazing.
yeah, I love it. Honestly, I'm so happy.
Sounded like the stars aligned and you just took the action to kind of get it over the finish line.
Pretty
'Cause
much.
you have to give yourself credit for
Thank you.
for doing
Thanks.
that.
You're sweet.
It's
You're sweet.
true.
Thank you.
Laura, since you have this book under wraps, can you tell us a little more about the next book that you're going to write?
Well, so I definitely will be writing another book. I had so much fun working on this book. Actually, it was the best professional experience I've ever had. Just in terms of like the challenge it brought me, but also the fun I had. So I will definitely be doing that again, but I can't say what it is just yet. I will say, however, just stay tuned. You can follow me on social media to find out when I'm ready to announce. So,
all right. So thank you so much for joining us, and looping back to the social media. Where can our audience find you online?
So you can find me on Twitter at Laura Shin. You can also check out my website, laurashin.com, and you can also check out the podcast at unchainedpodcast.com. And you can buy the book easily if you go to bit.ly/Cryptopians, bit.ly/CRYPTOPIANS, where you can access copies of the hardcover, the ebook, and the audiobook.
Amazing. Again, Laura, thank you for having us. It was such an honor to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was super fun. I enjoyed it.